All right. Well, as I mentioned in the hearing this morning, that there are 2 new cases today, but both of them are in quarantine, so we're very comfortable with that. So once again, it's a very good day for Queensland. There are 28 active cases, and the total confirmed cases is 1,145. And in the last 24 hours, we've had 9,216 tests. So once again, thank you Queenslanders for going out and getting tested. I'll hand over to the Deputy Premier and then to our Deputy Chief Health Officer, and then we're more than happy to answer your questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Premier. Those 2 new cases bring our number of active cases currently to 28, our total number in the pandemic so far to 1,145. Both of them were in quarantine and were known to be direct contacts of already confirmed cases. One of them, the 7th member of a household, all who now have had COVID-19 but who were in quarantine, and the other a confirmed community contact of a case. I want to make special mention today of Richard. Richard is our longest is our COVID patient in hospital the longest. He spent 77 days in intensive care, and next week will move into a rehabilitation bed where he will be taken care of. He's 81. He came off the Ruby Princess. He's had COVID since March, and he knows better than anyone just how awful this disease can be, how great our hospital services are at saving lives from COVID, but also how long it can take to recover. I wanted to mention briefly that further sewage testing in the Early Beach region has come back as negative. That does not mean that first test result was wrong. The first test result was right, but subsequent test results are negative, and we'll continue to test sewage there in conjunction with UQ and right around the state. And Dr. Sonia Bennett is here with us today. She is the Deputy Chief Health Officer. Dr. Jeanette Young has a well-earned weekend off, but I'm sure any medical-related questions Dr. Bennett is well placed to take.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Bennett.
Thank you, Premier and Deputy Premier. I won't repeat the numbers this morning that the Premier and Deputy Premier have just announced. Just suffice to say that it is very good news. I think the longer we go where we are picking up cases who are in quarantine and if they hadn't been traced may have been infectious in the community is a good sign, and I think a sign that that we can quickly get this outbreak under control if that continues every day that happens. We still have active cases, as the Deputy Premier said, and so most of those people are reasonably well, but we continue to monitor their health and hope they stay that way. One of the recent cases was an older gentleman, and as you know, the older community is particularly vulnerable to severe disease, and a reason why we can't get complacent about the pandemic and need to continue to monitor, both do our job in health and ask the community to do their role as well. So thank you. So there's no firm link. The reason that Dr. Young and many of us think there's a link is because prior to this recent cluster, they were our most recent cases in community, and we haven't seen any other community transmission or any other importations, and so it just makes epidemiological sense that that link is there around those cases. They are linked to the cluster more broadly. So one of the cases is linked to the Ipswich Hospital, but as you know, as we get generations on, it was actually a case, a community contact of a case, so not a hospital contact, if you like, but certainly linked to the hospital cluster. The other one is linked to one of the correctional facilities clusters and has occurred in a household. They've been in for some time, so long enough that by the time they did get onset of symptoms, so they were identified as potentially being exposed, put into quarantine. were not symptomatic at the time, developed symptoms in quarantine, were tested and positive, and that's exactly what we like to see. I can't tell you the exact number of days, but it's probably about a week.
When you say social contact, social contact, have you an idea of how much exposure they've had to the known case now, the people that gathered at the party, what sort of...
So it varies. If you're talking about the two recent cases, they're very different. One's a household contact. We know that COVID can transmit very quickly in households. It's a very infectious disease, a part of the reason we have to remain vigilant. The other contact, I don't have the details, but it's not a household contact, it's more of a social type contact. There doesn't have to be a lot of social interaction for transmission. It does vary. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the guidelines that we use, which is 15 minutes face-to-face contact or 2 hours in an sharing the same enclosed space. But we certainly see transmission outside of that as well, which is why we sort of extend the scope very broad when assessing contacts. So my understanding is that there's very active discussion with both the family and Mark Keynes, and that's ongoing. Certainly trying to find, a solution that will support both Mark and his family in moving forward. I'd just like to say I think we all recognise that these are difficult situations, every one of us, and there are reasons the restrictions are in place, and I think we've all seen the good outcome of that. But in every situation with Mark Keynes and others, the department works closely with both applying for exemptions and the patient to try to find a solution to support what they would like, but at the same time recognising that we need to continue to mitigate any risk of transmission. Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that's correct. I think there's many more cases, similar stories which are heartbreaking that the department is dealing with and the Chief Health Officer. I think clearly the ones raised in the media are high profile. I don't accept that the outcome's any different in those cases. I think they're just more high profile.
Premier, on that point though, with Sarah's case, that was heartbreaking yesterday. What led you to make the decision to make her go there and quickly? Was it because of the
It is absolutely heartbreaking, Adam. Anyone who would have seen those images is heartbroken. Everyone's human, and we're in a global pandemic at the moment. It is tough on everybody, and let me make it very clear: I don't make those decisions. I said to the Prime Minister I would refer it to the Chief Health Officer, and I did that.
Why did you make her running the state?
No. They're under. It's actually her decision. Under the Act, it's her decision. You've got to have someone who. You've got to take the clinical advice here. We're dealing with a health pandemic. It is absolutely tragic. It is heartbreaking. Families are not together at the moment. There are people at Heathrow waiting to come back home. There are people who are all around the world waiting to come back home. There are people who can't go and see babies or loved ones in Victoria. There's people who can't go and see people over in Western Australia. It is absolutely heartbreaking and gut-wrenching.
Because it is heartbreaking though.
Sorry? Yeah. I think National Cabinet has a role to play, and I do think that National Cabinet works in the best interests of the nation.
Do you stand by your comments made yesterday that this phone call was made to
Yes. I said that very clearly yesterday. I'm not commenting anymore
You
today.
criticise playing the victim.
No.
Are you not?
No. Sorry, no, I'm not. These are very, very heartbreaking issues. And as I said to the Prime Minister, I don't make these decisions. I was very clear. I do not make these decisions, the Chief Health Officer.
But you're making it based on
All those border issues stem
Yeah. Miss Joel?
issues stem from the borders. Are you able to give some sort of clarity on when the borders may open? We heard from Dr. Young about a week ago that talked about two incubations.
Yeah, the two, yep,
No community
yeah.
transmission. Is that criteria going to remain in place?
Well,
Full stop.
well, that's
We're
that.
not going to see any border change until we have.
Well, that's the advice of the Chief Health Officer. But what I've said, and I've said it many times at these press conferences, and I'll say it again, if as a nation we can focus on getting Victoria and New South Wales under control, then you can set a date for the whole country to open up. I have been absolutely consistent here on this, absolutely consistent.
But if the parameter is two weeks, two incubation periods, 28 days, no community transmission, then surely that doesn't change. It's either that's what's safe or that's not. If that's the case, you just need to tell people that until that happens, no border.
And that's the Chief Health Officer's advice.
Should there be a rethink on Canberra, the A16? Sarah came from Canberra, no cases in 6 days. If there's an exemption unit which looks at everything very seriously, is what Jeanette Young said yesterday, is that not an exception?
But from memory, I have to stand corrected, but from memory, someone came through Canberra into Queensland with the virus. Is my memory, Deputy Premier? Yes. Yep. Yeah. What I said very clearly is that I supported National Cabinet doing some further work, but I reserved the state's right to see how it goes and to see some detail. We haven't seen any detail. And there might be 2 states that actually give it a trial and see how it goes. But if you have a look at the federal court case, actually said that hotspots don't necessarily work. So there's been a federal court case on this as well.
Do you expect more of these heartbreaking stories to come out prepared for the backlash to the
Look,
network? Will come
I feel these issues very personally, just like everyone else does. That's why we've put in place this specialist care unit. We have around 80 people in this exemptions unit looking at these issues, and these people are human beings as well. They're having to go through all of the details and make really difficult and tough decisions. But this is happening in other states as well. It's happening around the world. It's not nice.
Do you think the majority of Queenslanders, though obviously getting touched by these individual cases, will be able to look at
But who wouldn't be touched? Who honestly, who wouldn't be touched by these cases? You know, they are heartbreaking. But we are in a global pandemic. We are in a global pandemic, and my job's to keep Queenslanders safe. That's my job. My job is to keep 5 million Queenslanders safe. I just have to do my job, Joel, to the best of my ability.
Last one.
Yeah. Well, I'm quite sure you probably would see those sort of similar cases because, from memory, down in Victoria, you can, at the moment you can only have 10 people attending a funeral. We all know back when we could only have 10 people attend a funeral. I know one of the ladies who works in my electorate office, she lost her partner and her family couldn't go to the funeral. Of course it's upsetting. It's very upsetting. But we're in a global pandemic.
I think we've got to go.
Sorry, Jack? Well, no, there's COVID safe plans for industry, and then there's individual exemptions where people are looked at on compassionate grounds and the circumstances of every individual case. Sorry? Look, I've asked my Director General to see if we can put some more staff there. I think it's absolutely crucial that we have as many staff that are needed to deal with these complex and heartbreaking issues. I mean, it's a very, very tough time for families. Alison? Yes. Yeah. Very sad to see them go. They're all... No. I mean, at every election you would see people, retiring for a whole range of reasons. And we know with Coralie, she's had a really, really tough battle with breast cancer, and she has decided that it's time for her to spend more time with her family. Dr. Lynham talked at length about his medical registration, how he can't keep his medical registration up and do the job full time. So he's made that decision. And Kate Jones has been very public in making her decision. You only had to see her yesterday with her young children, and I actually caught up with her afterwards, and I said to her son Tommy, I said, what do you think about Mum's decision? And he said, I'll get to see more of Mum. She's got young kids.
Last, Lydia.
All three, honestly. It's yeah. I think it's, of course it's going to be tough, and I hope we get good candidates out in the field as quickly as possible. Lydia is lucky last.
Lydia.
Well, I say to Matthias, I mean, these are difficult decisions and they're heartbreaking. I'm human just like everyone else. These issues hurt me deeply. They hurt me deeply because during this pandemic, I've lost loved ones as well. So I know exactly what people are going through.
Gotta go.